First things first. On behalf of Penn State Lehigh Valley's faculty, dear graduates, congratulations. May your journeys be fascinating and fruitful. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce this year's commencement speaker, media leader, and accomplished author, Bill Phillips. At Penn State Lehigh Valley, we encourage our students to be curious, to ask and pursue intellectual and practical questions, and to diligently work toward improvement of self and community. Bill Phillips, as editor, author, and person, exemplifies these qualities, and I'm sure that in his speech, he will have some great advice to offer in this regard. Bill Phillips is Vice President and Editor-in-Chief of Men's Health, the world's largest men's magazine brand. Phillips joined Men's Health in 2003 as executive editor and was promoted to editor of menshealth.com in 2009. Bill distinguished himself in this position by conceptualizing the website not as a unit auxiliary to the print magazine, but as its own entity with a distinct audience, distinct affordances, and addressing distinct needs and expectations. In 2012, Phillips was named editor-in-chief of Men's Health. In this role, he oversees multiple editorial platforms, including print, digital, social, television, and branded books, which collectively reach a monthly audience of more than 35 million. In 2015, under Phillips' leadership, Men's Health won the National Magazine Award for General Excellence, the industry's highest honor. Now, as a professor of literacy education, I could not introduce Bill Phillips without particular reference to his work as a writer. Beyond his exceptional career as an editor, Bill Phillips is also a prolific author, whose articles are often featured in Men's Health. In 2005, his 2005 feature story, Hunting My Father's Killer, was a finalist in the personal service category of the National Magazine Awards. Bill is also the author of the 2015 hit book, The Better Man Project. In his writing, Bill Phillips demonstrates an acute sense of audience. He artfully combines a highly readable and witty style with well-researched facts to deliver relatable texts that stand to inspire readers to make small, incremental changes towards self-improvement. Bill's noteworthy awareness of audience has been evident even in the way he approached the task of this commencement address. Rather than simply writing a generic talk, Bill took the time to meet with some of our students to discuss what inspiration and advice they are looking for from their commencement speaker. And he worked with them to prepare an interactive component to this address. In closing, I have to note that Bill is a proud Penn State alumnus whose commitment to his alma mater is shown through the establishment of a scholarship fund, as well as by his work in mentoring students and speaking at events such as our commencement ceremony today. We thank him for supporting current and future Penn State students. And now, Bill Phillips.
Wow, thank you. What an insanely awesome introduction. Some of it's actually true. I just want to point that out. Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thank you, Dr. Richardson, and the faculty and parents and, of course, students for having me. And as Dr. Asciando said, I did want this to be a little interactive. I did want to try a couple things. It may fail miserably, but that'll be funny. Right? So the first thing, I'm going to start with a question, okay? Show of hands. Who here, besides me, has been drinking? I thought we had more in common. Are you Penn Staters? Right? When I got the call that I had earned the opportunity to speak to you guys today, I was filled with all kinds of emotions, obviously excitement, fear, mostly shock. And And I'm not exaggerating. I graduated 25 years ago this week and my commencement was at Rec Hall, and if you had been there that day, you never would have picked me as the guy to be here today. I don't think my mom wouldn't have picked me to be here today. Seriously, I didn't even tell her because I knew she wouldn't believe me. There was a guy at my commencement 25 years ago, my best friend in college, Andy. He was there, and I invited him today, and he can attest. Andy?
I'm watching you do it, and I'm not sure.
So, thanks, Andy. That was clearly unrehearsed. So, thinking about what I wanted to say to you guys, I thought back to my commencement and the commencement speaker. You all know Bill Clinton, right? He wasn't my commencement speaker. I have no idea who gave my commencement speech or what he or she said. I'm sure it was motivational. Clearly, it wasn't memorable. And probably wasn't useful. So, but what I had hoped to do was to accomplish all that today, and not only kick you guys out the door, but maybe give you some tools you can use as you face the new opportunities ahead. So, we're going to give it a try and see how it goes. What I did draw upon when I started thinking about what I wanted to say was my experience at Men's Health. And if you guys aren't familiar with Men's Health magazine, it's the biggest men's magazine in the world with 42 editions in 65 countries. What makes Men's Health special is that it is about the reader. It's for and about the reader. On every page of the magazine, every paragraph, every sentence, every word, it's there to serve the reader, to make that reader a better person that day when they read the magazine. So for me to do my job, I need to know my audience. And so I thought for me to do my job today, I need to know my audience. So that's what Dr. Asciando was referring to. In April, a bunch of students gathered on campus, and we talked about what they wanted to hear from me today. And lots of great ideas. One of the first people to speak up said, I want to hear your story. How did you get here? So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with that question. And I want to warn you, this could go on forever. You guys aren't up to anything today, are you? And it could get really boring, but hey, you asked for it, so I'm going to just go for it. I was born in Western Pennsylvania. My dad and mom were high school sweethearts. When I was 8, my dad was driving a bread truck, and my mom worked at a sheet store as a clerk. And at one of my dad's stops, at the store called Anderson's, it was a little general store in this small town, the owner had mentioned to him that they were looking to get out. He and his wife were kind of done. And my dad always thought it'd be cool if he could run his own business. He thought he could do better for himself if he had control of the business. And so he and my mom got all their savings together. They took a second mortgage out on the house, and they bought this general store. And it was very much a family business. It was open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day, and my dad especially was there that whole time, 16 hours a day. My sisters and I have 2 sisters. We were there a lot too. And I have to be honest, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I came up with all kinds of hobbies that I suddenly had. To this day, I'm a really good bowler because leagues were on Saturdays and I didn't want to go to work. And this is true. This is absolutely true. But my dad and I did have one tradition, and that was every Sunday morning we'd go to breakfast and then go into the office or into the store, to work that morning. And back then, newspapers were so thick with advertising on Sunday that we had to put them together. So we had to go extra early to put them together. And but one day he woke me up even earlier, and he's like, let's go have a chat at breakfast. And I was like, okay, we're gonna have a chat, whatever. I must have been 15, 16 at the time, and I could tell something was weighing on him. In the middle of dinner or breakfast, he said, "I just want you to know, Billy, I'm not giving you the business." And I was like, okay. To be honest, I had no interest in it, but I also wasn't really thinking about what I was going to do. And he said, "You're going to go to college because you don't want to make your money a nickel at a time." And it's that last sentence that I really remember most because it just resonated with me. And another way of thinking about it is, get paid for what you know, not for what you do. And that's what college affords students, is to enter a career path, become a leader in the field, get paid for what they know. And it's an extraordinary opportunity, and I'm a testament to that. So apparently, I was going to college. So, I was lucky in one respect. I went to the worst high school in Pennsylvania. And I'm not making this up. The Philadelphia Inquirer rated every high school on education quality in Pennsylvania, and mine was the worst. That made it easy to get straight A's, which I did. And when it came time to take the SATs, I was like, let's give it a shot, see what happens. And I marked, send to Penn State, send to Pitt, send to wherever. And, 6 months later, I got a letter in the mail saying I was accepted to the University Park campus at Penn State. And I was like, this is great. Never actually had been there. I accepted my offer at Penn State without visiting. And so, by the way, my 13-year-old daughter's here, and she's hearing so much that she's never heard before, and I can't wait. I can't wait for her to tell Mom all this. Of course, going to in my freshman year, I had to figure out sort of what I wanted to be, and I had really no idea. I mean, they didn't offer Major League Baseball general manager as a major. I thought that would be cool. I did think tornadoes were cool, so I decided I was going to be a meteorologist. I took all that coursework to kind of prepare for that. Calculus, physics, chemistry, and the first semester didn't go well. I'll be honest. A lot of my classmates had the textbooks already in high school, and my high school didn't prepare me for that. So it was a struggle for me. And then there was one other problem that I had. I didn't, what's the word? I didn't go to class. So as a consequence, I had a 1.3 GPA my first semester. And I know, look at you guys, you're like, holy shit, how did you get here? And my second semester was much the same, but my second semester, I had a moment that would change my life. And I want to say it was like March or April. I was sitting in my dorm room, and I was typing on my word processor, which you guys know what that is, right? Word processor. And my roommate said to me, are you going to study for the chemistry test tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, I'll pull an all-nighter, whatever. And he's like, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm writing my baseball preview. I do this every year for my friends, and they're counting on me, and I'm on deadline, so leave me alone. And there was a beat, and he said, you got to be a writer. That's what you really, truly like to do. And that moment was the first time I thought I could be a writer. And it was my roommate who put that thought in my mind. It was like a light bulb. It was actually sort of like a door suddenly was there that I could walk through, and it seemed really fun on the other side. And that light bulb got brighter the next week because I got my chemistry test back. And those big classes, like those tests are multiple choice, so like you could guess and get a 25%. I got a 23. Seriously. So I set upon the next week to change my major, and my GPA wasn't high enough to get into the School of Journalism, but I could go into English. And as it turns out, they had two options in English. One was literature, which wasn't of interest. Sorry, Dr. Thigpen. And the other one was, and I'm not making this up, the other one was literally magazine writing. And that sounded cool to me. I could write for Sports Illustrated. And so I changed all my classes for my sophomore year to kind of go down this track. And the very first class I had was, I want to say it was English 215, but it was called Nonfiction Magazine Writing. And the professor was Dr. Thomas Buckley, who's now at University of Texas. And the very first thing I wrote for him, I sold to State College Magazine, the very first story. So it was like, I can do this. So the rest of my 3 years at Penn State went great. I graduated on time. I got my 1.5, which I had my freshman year, up to a 3.0 or thereabouts. I mean, come on, we'll round up, okay? And this might be my crowning achievement. I got an A in calculus my junior year. Now, this was calculus for dummies, the one they give liberal arts majors, but I still got an A, and I feel really proud of that. So that brings me up to where you guys are, right? That brings me up to my commencement. And what am I going to do now? And that was the big question for me. I was a kid who liked to fade into the background. I wasn't a kid who liked to be out there. That's why I hated the store. I hated to talk to people, and I was still terrified of the world a bit. And I knew magazines. The Center of Magazines was in New York, but it was terrifying to me. So I decided that I was going to move to Washington, D.C. I had a friend down there, and she told me that there are tons of magazines down there, and it turns out there are. They're all trade magazines. So I moved down there. And my first job was as an editorial assistant for a magazine called Pest Management. This was a trade magazine for exterminators, who I learned quickly do not like to be called that. They're pest control operators. As I'm sure you all know, 1991 was a really up and down year for them. And the editor said to me, "Go find me a picture of a roller coaster that we can put on the cover." And there was no Google Images back then, right? So I found a place I could go. The International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions was just down the street. And I called them up, and it turns out they had like 4 gazillion roller coaster pictures. So I drove down there, and I met this guy there named Rick Henderson. And Rick gave me all the photos I wanted. We hit it off. We had a great chat, and I went back to work. But a few months later, I saw an ad in the Washington Post for an assistant editor role at the association, the Amusement Park Association. And I put a letter together, and I sent it to Rick. Remember me? And turns out he did, and he brought me in, and I got that job. And what was amazing about that job is my first day, I learned that I was an assistant editor to nobody. It was just me. I was 23, and this magazine was like 250 pages. And so I learned quickly everything there is to know about making a magazine. Not just writing, but editing, assigning, working with designers, working with the printer, working with advertisers. So I literally learned how to make a magazine by myself over the course of 3 years. And 3 years into this, I had an annual review with Rick. And he wrote in my annual review, again, not making this up, it's time for Bill to get the hell out of here. And he explained, he said, he knew that I wanted to be in consumer magazines, and he said, you got to go to New York, dude. Like, you could do this. So that's what I did. And, like, how amazing to have a mentor in Rick who saw something in me before I saw it in myself. And so I went to New York, and my first job there was a copy editor for Popular Mechanics magazine. Notable for 2 reasons. First of all, the person who hired me is now my wife. She would have killed me if I'd have forgot that. And secondly, I met a guy there, our electronics editor. His name was Frank Vizard. And Frank, we hit it off over basketball and that sort of thing. And not long after I started there, Frank decided he was leaving. He was going to Popular Science, which was a bitter rival. In fact, when Frank announced where he was going, they security escorted him out of the building. But Frank went over to Popular Science, and a few months later, he called me, and he said, we have a managing editor job over here for you. Do you want it? And I was like, don't I have to interview? He's like, of course, but you're great. You'll get this. I was 26. Like, 26-year-olds at the time in this industry did not get managing editor jobs. But I figured, like, it's another door opening. Let's walk through it and see what happens. So I went over, interviewed for it. I happened to have laryngitis, which I think in this case may have helped me. They couldn't hear anything I was saying. And I got the job, and over 6 years worked myself up to the number 2 position at Popular Science. And then in 2003, I got another call. This time it was from a guy by the name of Jeff Satari. I'd worked with Jeff at Pop Sci when I first got there. He was trying to launch a magazine for young men called Verge, and I helped him a little bit. And Jeff said, hey, there's a managing editor job here at Men's Health. Any interest? And at first I said no, because it was a little bit of a step back. But I also wanted to not be pigeonholed as that science and technology guy. I wanted to have a men's magazine title on my resume. So it seemed like, again, a door was opening. It was a big decision because my wife and I were in New York. Lindsay was just born, and moving to Pennsylvania was a big deal. But I decided to go for it and arrived in 2003. And then worked myself up from managing editor to deputy editor to executive editor to editor of the website, and now the editor-in-chief of the brand. So I'm going to come back and I'll talk a little bit more about Pop Sci and Men's Health at the next phase. But let's go back to that day in April when I met with some of the folks here about what you wanted to hear from me today. They had lots of questions, lots of great ideas. I mean, obviously you guys are all super ready to jump into the workforce and do your jobs, but the questions are mostly around, how do I find a job? How do I stand out? How do I rise once I get in? And so what I decided to do was put together a little presentation and something I like to call the 10 things that your Penn State professors forgot to teach you. Because I hear they're not very good. And some other stuff, in fact, I think. So if we could get to the first question, please. There's a video, I believe.
Hi, I'm Linda Habrakovich, and I'm graduating with a degree in RHS. In today's competitive job market, how can we stand out?
It was the question she asked. Great. Well, I don't have an answer for that. Sorry. No. The first job is the hardest to find. It really is. When I post for a job, I get 200, 300 applicants, and so the most important thing to remember is that, a well-considered cover letter is the key to never finding a job. And this is true. I mean, like, if to whom it may concern, dear Men's Health editors, I really love your magazine. I saw your ad in. Ignore it all. The people who do best for me are the people who they rise above because they do something incredibly creative. I'll give you an example. We have a front of book section in our magazine called Useful Stuff. It's very bitty, and there's like 5 stories in every page. And we had a candidate who basically redesigned a spread of that section and wrote 5 stories about himself, and then reported and wrote the other 5 stories about stuff Men's Health covers. And that, for him, that's how he stood out, and that's the kind of thing you need to do, because a cover letter is just something I ignore. Seriously. Another one is, the adage like, under promise, over deliver is outdated. Over promise and over deliver. Raise my expectations and then exceed them. Here's an example of the type of candidates the people who are applying for Men's Health face. I had a guy, his name's Matt Bean, and this was maybe 6-7 years ago. I asked him for 10 ideas for Men's Health. And he sent me, 3 days later, 26 single-spaced pages of ideas for Men's Health. Matt Bean skyrocketed up our masthead, went off and was the editor-in-chief of Entertainment Weekly, and now runs all of innovation for Time Inc. That's how you stand out. Don't be shy about exploiting your friends. I mean, seriously, if anybody here who wants a career in, magazines, media, digital media, advertising, Rodale, being a better man, books, six-pack abs, getting the girl, losing your gut. I mean, seriously, I'm your guy. Like, don't be shy about reaching out to the people you know and the people that you think you know. There's 2 degrees of separation in any industry, and if somebody said to me, "I want a job at Marie Claire," I could get them there with one call. I couldn't get them the job though. Next question, please.
Hi, my name is Allie Lynn, and I am graduating in corporate communications. And I was wondering if you could talk to us about how persistence has led you to your success in your field.
Well, it's a great question, because my whole career has been nothing but persistence. Most people in my industry, they started because they went to the Newhouse School or Northwestern journalism program, and they were highly ranked interns, and they came into these magazines and they worked their way up. And I went to DC and worked at Pest frickin' Management, right? I mean, seriously. And managed to work my way up. So the way that happens is really it's actually the next rule. There's no wrong path is what I'm saying, but the next rule is really the key here. Talent always rises. And this is something you can never forget. It doesn't ever fail. If you're talented, you'll find a way. Every door you go through will lead you somewhere. And even if you go down the wrong path for a while, you'll find your way back, because talent has a way of rising every time. I learned this, actually. I was at Popular Science, right? And I must have been managing editor, but I was up for a top job, and somebody else internally got it for me, and I got it, and I didn't, and I was crushed. And the creative director, who's the chief designer of the magazine, he took me out for coffee. He's like, "What's your problem?" And I was like, I explained. He's like, "Bill, you always have your talent." And that's comforting, just knowing that you always have your talent. And no matter what happens to you, because it's not going to work out everywhere. Your talent might not be right. When I went to Popular Mechanics, I was not enjoying that job, other than my wife. But it wasn't a good fit. The chemistry was wrong. But I had my talent, and I took it somewhere else and did really well with it. This is a pretty obvious one, I think. But the answer is always yes. Yes opens doors. When I got to Men's Health, I had taken a step back title-wise, but I was willing to do any project that came my way, and that was, newsstand specials that I could put my name on. I just wanted to own something. My boss called me one day and said, "Hey, you want to help out with the website?" I didn't know what that meant. That was like an 80-hour-a-week job, and I was like, "This isn't helping. I'm doing." But you know what? I learned so much, and without that experience, there's no way I could have achieved the editor-in-chief role that I have today. And another thing to remember is that there's no finish line. There's no putting your feet up and saying, "I did it, I'm here." The finish line just keeps moving. And, in that same way, your education never stops. And the people you meet will always surprise you with how smart they are. When I was at Popular Science, and I was the executive editor, and the editor-in-chief was leaving, I put my name in to become the editor-in-chief, and they instead went with this guy named Scott Mowbray, who was within the Time Inc. organization, and he had a lot of great stuff on his resume. And Scott came in, and I was kind of annoyed that he got it over me because I thought I knew everything. And I learned more in a year under Scott than I probably had the previous 10. Same thing happened recently at Rodale, where I work now. A new editorial director came in who has 35 years of experience. In 3 months, it was like, holy crap, how could I have 25 years of experience. How could I need to learn so much? But, you have to keep your eyes open, your heart open, and keep learning. I think we have another question next. Oops. Did I go back? Did I do this? What am I doing? I'm going the wrong way. Darn it.
Hi, my name is Dylan Treon. I'm graduating with a business marketing degree. My question for you is, do you feel the Lehigh Valley is a good location for recent college grads searching for a job?
Where's Dylan? Hi, Dylan. Well, think about the companies that are here, right? Air Products and Olympus and, Lehigh Valley Health Network and St. Luke's and, it goes on and on and on. I mean, the answer is obviously yes, but I'm going to answer that with a no. And here's why. Because of this. Right? You can apply for a job anywhere in the world today and have an interview tomorrow and start next week. How powerful is that? And I have to tell you, every time I've challenged myself to get out of my comfort zone and leave where I live or where I'm working, it's always led to even better success, even bigger success. So yeah, this is a great place to live and work, and by all means, stay here. But at the same time, don't be afraid to use this, because this is the most powerful tool imaginable. And, in that respect, this rule, let your life's work find you. When I came to Men's Health, it was really meant as a 2-year experiment. I mentioned earlier that I wanted to go from a science and technology editor to a men's magazine editor. But my goal was Esquire, to be honest with you. So I thought if I can get a couple years in at Men's Health, maybe I can move on to Esquire. And what I realized when I got to Men's Health is just how profoundly the brand, and how powerful the brand, and how profoundly it can change you. And you start reading it, and you start doing the things it tells you to do, and you become a better person. You become fitter and smarter and healthier. And I realized that, it wasn't a stepping stone to Esquire. It was a stepping stone to a better life for me and for my family. And, no regrets. I left my comfort zone of New York, and I found my life's work. I think we have another question.
My name is Kevin Mitra, and I'll be graduating with a degree in information science technology. And my question for Mr. Phillips surrounds expectations versus reality. Everyone has a storied version of life after college, but my question to you is, what's life really like after college?
I'm sorry, Kevin, I can't tell you that for another half hour. Where are you, Kevin? Where are you? Where's Kevin? Oh, hi. Hey, I tell you what, it's different for everyone, but let's run through it real quickly just for me. Here's your 20s, right? It's great to be a kid with some money. You're going to spend it all. You're going to have fun. You're going to collect friends. You're going to have tons of fun. You're going to realize work is hard, and there's no summers off. It sucks. You'll meet tons of people who are a lot smarter than you, and you'll think your boss is an idiot, right? Next, your 30s. Everyone's getting married. You're going to feel pressure to do it too. You start understanding people, and you begin to know what you don't know, which makes you regret everything you've ever said in public. You finally feel you're good at what you do, and chances are you are, and you definitely think your boss is an idiot, right? And your 40s. 40s are when you kind of start figuring it out. You miss your 20s, but you feel like a complete person, which is great. You love your family. You have money in the bank, also great. But you do miss being a shell of yourself when a singular experience or a chance meeting could literally change you as a person. And you realize you, in fact, were the idiot. Oh, and you know what? I'm in my 40s, so I can't answer the 50s. I can only take a couple guesses. So. All right. Next question. There are young kids in the crowd. I better get off that slide.
Hi, my name is Tashina Kabaz. I'm graduating with a psychology degree. I've been doing a lot of research on positive psychology. And my question to you is, what methods do you use to incorporate a peaceful state of being into your everyday life?
Finally, an easy question, tequila. No, here's something. I'm an optimistic guy, and I truly believe this. You make your own weather. And I think Paige referred to it earlier. You know, everywhere you go, you got to see the bright side. And if you can't see the bright side, you got to go somewhere where there is a bright side. And that's fundamentally what it's about. And it's a lot easier to feel positive when you've reached, you know, where I am, because I have a new perspective. I have 2 young daughters that I love. And, you know, one of them is at a soccer tournament. You guys are lovely. I'd rather be there. You know, so you just kind of have to make your own weather. And there is actual research that proved this out. But I'm going to tell you one quick story with my younger daughter, and because I don't have anywhere to go. And Taylor was, I think, you know, playing second grade basketball, and I decided I was going to coach her, and it sucked because she couldn't reach the basket. And there were like 15 games, and I would take my daughter to play basketball, and she couldn't reach the basket. And by the last game, she just didn't want to go anymore. And I was driving over to the game, and she was in the back seat, like being all cranky, which she's good at. And I said, Taylor, like, come on, like, you know, make your own weather. And she had no idea what I was talking about. And I explained, I said, you know, tonight I just want you to shoot. I just want you to take one shot. She's like, I can't reach the basket, and I hate this game, and blah, 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 and this and that. And I said, you know what, sometimes you just got to try. You just got to go for it. So, you know, first half of the game, and I saw, like, she got the ball, and I saw, like, this light go on, and she starts running to the basket, not dribbling. She's holding the ball like this, and she shot it, and she scored. And she ended up shooting 4 times and scoring twice in that game, and she didn't realize she could do it. She made her own weather. Finally, I will leave you with the 10th thing your teachers forgot to teach you, and that is, when in doubt, take a step. So it's not going to be easy. You know, you're going to have challenges every day. You're going to feel you're going to feel paralyzed. Sometimes you're going to feel like you want to step aside or step back. And you know, it's like on a highway in a car. You can't get into the passing lane if you're standing still. You need momentum. So sometimes just taking a small step is the way to get some momentum going, and that can lead to great things. So, you know, the Better Man Project, the book that I wrote, was all about that, taking one step. You know, when we have readers write in and say, I need to lose 20 pounds, how do I do it? You do it by losing 1 pound. That's how you do it. You do it by taking a walk today. You do it by doing 5 push-ups today. You do it by using 3 sugars instead of 4 in your coffee. You take a step, because once you gather some momentum, you become unstoppable. And it's amazing how much ground you can cover in a month or a year once you take a step. So whenever you feel paralyzed and you're not sure what to do, just take some step. And that brings me to one final slide. And I want to, you met Andy earlier. Andy is one of the most interesting guys I've ever met. When he came to Penn State, like, he was reading quantum physics books for fun. It was so weird. But he also was a part-time poet. And when I graduated, Andy gave me a book of his poetry. And I don't think he knows this even, but there was a line in one of his poems that became my guide for life. And I've repeated it over and over. It's like a guiding principle, and I want to share it with you today. The wise step forward, not knowing the future when they see an opening door. In 30 minutes, you guys are going to walk out this door. There's a world of opportunity in front of you. Which way are you going to step? Thank you.